a true conservative. I stand here in front of you, letting you know this is where I stand. Dr. Hayworth just mentioned, checking my notes here, massive deportation. On Dr. Hayworth's website, throughout the district, when I followed her around, different areas we've gone, Dr. Hayworth has never mentioned massive deportation on the website. She said they have to stay, get on a registration program. I want them to go. Last night, at a forum in Mayapack, when the crowd was against her, because in Putnam County, illegal immigration was a big issue. When the crowd was against her, because the majority of people are against illegal immigration, Dr. Hayworth tossed in that if anyone overstays their visa, they should be deported. She never mentioned that on her website or in the 1 year that she's been on the campaign trail. And then now, she just said massive deportation. But she never mentioned that on her website, which the voter goes to find out. So the question is this, just like the gay marriage question. Which Dr. Hayworth are we getting if we send her to Washington, D.C.? You know where I stand. I'm a conservative. I'm your servant. Dr. Hayworth, we don't know where she stands. Because the last article that came out in the paper today, it was basically, where do you stand on illegal immigration? And they quoted Dr. Hayworth of saying that, secure the borders and deport people. So if you're going to look at the paper and say, wow, Dr. Hayworth's against illegal immigration, like Hayworth-DeCarlo, she's got my vote. But on her website, she mentions nothing like that. Since September of 2009, she mentions nothing, my notes, massive deportation, at all. We want to know what representatives we're sending back and going to Washington, D.C. You know where I stand? Because I answer yes or no questions with clarity and simple yes or no. I want to secure our borders, and I want to send them back. Right now, Dr. Hayworth is all over the place because she's trying to cater to everybody. I believe the conservative philosophy is you adhere to the platform. I do not believe in the Big Tent philosophy. Dr. Hayworth apparently believes in the Big Tent philosophy because she's all over the place. So when you cast your vote on September 14th, remember, I stand firmly here, I answer questions yes or no, as opposed to my opponent who's all over the place. You have to decide who you want to send to Washington, D.C.
We have 43 towns, cities, small cities and villages in this district. I won the majority of the endorsements from our Republican committees. Neil got 0 endorsements. I won the Conservative Party endorsement, and I have the line on the ballot. Neil did not. I won the endorsement of the Independence Party. Neil did not. Do we have a big tent here? Yes, we absolutely do. We want to get every American into this tent because my position about immigration. When I said massive deportation just now, you heard those 2 words together. That's right. We cannot do that. That indeed is something that I have not espoused. As a practical matter, it cannot be done. I do not support blanket amnesty either. As a practical matter, we are going to have a series of steps in place. First, secure the borders. Second, or simultaneously, use E-Verify to make sure that we know the status of our workers. We are going to have, as mentioned, legal immigration facilitation for seasonal workers and other categories of workers who are deemed vital or important to American enterprises, our family farms being one. We are going to have to deport immediately any illegal immigrant who has committed an additional crime on our shores. We will be able to identify gradually those who have overstayed their visas. Processes can be instituted when we have an orderly system that works. But if we don't have border security first, none of these other things matter, and they become clownish answers to a serious problem. We need to put our best minds to work on this. We need to put people through who have been vetted and tested in our public arena. I have been vetted and tested, I am proud to tell you. When we had our Republican convention, I was fortunate enough to have 36,000 votes, weighted votes at the end of the convention. My partner here had 77 weighted votes. Folks, our district's Republicans and conservatives and independents are smart people who think about the issues. And I present myself to you as someone who has had the privilege of being through the process with them and being selected. And I will not condemn my colleagues in the Republican, conservative, and independence parties for being somehow foolish or silly or trivial, because they are all smart, involved, and concerned citizens. And thank you.
And some guy named Andrew Cuomo. If you're proud to be with, you can have it. Second, she was endorsed by the Conservative Party by pro-abortion, weak on gun rights, Rick Blasio. You can have him. I don't have him. Conservative. Are you true conservative? You know where I stand. It's simple this. The committees that you talked about that were so great. The committees, anyone can sit down and I can tell you. They talk to you for 5 minutes. How much money do you have? 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 And wait a second. What's your funding? Second thing. The Tea Party groups, which I was endorsed by a real Tea Party. The Tea Party groups sit down with you for 3 hours. And they I had Tea Parties interviewing me for, guess what? Not 5 minutes, 3 hours. Of the 2010 election. You know why? Because they vet, use that word, they vet the candidates the way it should be done. Character, experience, issues. Do you stand firm on every issue? And then as every Tea Party member knows, when they ask you a question, you better answer it. Because if you don't, they'll answer it again. Continually, continually. My opponent has not answered your questions with a yes or no. I have. When you walk into a high school like this, or throughout the district, and you're voting on September 14th, you know that I'm pro-life, that I will defend life, and I will defend the United States Constitution, and you know where I stand on every issue, because when those issues in Congress come about, if you don't know where your candidate stands on all the issues, and especially if any candidate avoids the questions, then when they turn around and vote the opposite way, don't be surprised. She talks about Republicans. Every time Republicans endorse a pro-abortion candidate and they go to Washington, D.C., they always vote and veer left. I will stay right here on the right-hand side, and I will always stand proud and let you know where I stand before you elect me.
This is indeed similar to one of the questions we asked earlier, but it's a little bit more specific, and it's more red meat for everyone. As Republicans for smaller government, what departments of the government would you eliminate? And when can we expect you to introduce legislation to eliminate them? You're up again. I don't, back and forth. Leanne, would you like to go? Because I lost track.
Oh, I don't mind.
Okay. After all that, for smaller government, what departments would you eliminate, and when can we expect you to introduce these bills?
Well, the first departments that I would certainly seek to reduce would be the ones involved in crafting the many regulations that are already being written. 2 buildings worth of people in Washington are working as we speak on all the regulations that are going to flow from the new health law. So the first thing we want to do is stop them from doing whatever they're doing. And that doesn't necessarily involve wholesale elimination of existing departments, although it's certainly fair to say that every aspect of our bureaucracy, and in terms of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those are established entitlement programs that need to be on a very sound footing. They're not part of the non-military discretionary spending, which is roughly 1/3 of the budget that we can look at in terms of, hey, where would you start eliminating departments? I would have to say, as mentioned before, that the Department of Education, I think, could safely be eliminated from the federal budget. I would defer that to the states. Again, I am a constitutionalist. I believe that the citizens in the states should have responsibility for education. It is not feasible for the federal government to try to dictate from above about education. So the Department of Education, I think, could safely be jettisoned. Now again, these are straitened times. So, you know, we start talking about things that we actually like, but there is, you know, there are departments involved. There's the National Endowment for the Arts. I'd be willing to put that in private hands. I think that's something that the federal government right now can't. That would be a nice thing to have, but I don't think it's something we have to have. The Department of Energy probably could be reduced, since it does not seem in the minerals management section to be doing its job effectively. So I think we could safely tell the Department of Energy that we're going to have to start deferring a lot of their functions onto the states, and have perhaps the Department of Interior make sure that we adhere to certain environmental standards already enshrined in the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts. So those are some starters for us. We're going to have to look at the entire federal budget. There is no question. Nothing, unfortunately, will be sacred, especially if we cannot get the economy growing again. But if we can get an appropriate level of growth based on empowering our private sector in the ways that I've been talking about with you, then we may not have to face such draconian times as we might otherwise imagine.